Hi everyone, I'm Alexander Zeitlin and this is the Lockdown Lecture Series for Beginning Violin, adapted from the Alias Music Introductions course for the classroom setting. Let's jump into Lesson 4. So last week we used our strings and fingers to mark all of the fingerings for what should have been the entire rest of the nursery rhymes all the way down to the end of the page. And so your homework should look like this. You should basically have all of these strings and fingers, and here let me just kind of scroll down. You can double check Twinkle and make sure that you have all of these. You can pause the video and make sure your fingerings are correct. Here's Are You Sleeping? You can pause the video and make sure your fingerings are correct. And here's London Bridge. Pause and make sure all your fingerings are correct. So your page should look like this, and let's just check your homework. Let's go ahead and play through all of these. You can play together with me and make sure that you can keep up. So here is Twinkle. Grab your instruments and give it a try. That's Twinkle. Let's try Are You Sleeping? And just for everyone's, so you can all see it better, let me switch to this view. There we go. All right, here is Are You Sleeping? And lastly, London Bridge. So those are all our songs. Keep practicing them, even if you can keep up, because the better you know your left hand, the more attention you'll have to your right hand. So at this point, your hobo exercises should look pretty good. Let's see. At this point, you can take a look at starting to use the bow for all of our nursery rhymes as well. So let's take a look at adding the bow to the scale. Okay, so if your hobo exercises look good, now you're ready to add the bow to the scale. You know how to play long bows on every single note in this, just on the open strings, and now all you're doing is you're changing which finger you're pressing down. Now, for now, you're going to get ready to play your scale with the bow. Set the bow on the string. You want to set up your violin just like every time we've done it, on the shoulder, chin, then pick up your bow. Make sure your bow hand is well set first. Set it down near the frog under the metal guard, and just make sure that pinky's rounded, thumb is rounded. Then you're going to play your first note, which is G0. And I recommend just pausing and making sure your next finger is ready, which is G1. And then pausing, making sure that the next finger is ready, which is G2. And so on, G3. And then you will continue on through the scale. Now, just a couple things to pay attention to when you're doing this. I'm sure you've all kind of figured out that doing more than one thing at a time, like for example in the bow, making sure it's on the right string, making sure it's in the like kind of between the fingerboard and the bridge, just watching all those things is hard. But now you have even more things, because now you're going to make sure the left hand's in the right place. So take your time, and I want you to make sure that you set your left hand in the right place before you continue on. Now, I'd like to introduce a really important point about studying the scale with your bow at first, and then also even studying the songs with your bow. This is that the most important thing is that you actually learn to use your whole bow rather than play with any speed or any rhythm actually. So many beginners, like if I could point out to maybe the worst habits beginners have, probably the first one is just that their violin is like here, on their collarbone and down instead of up here in a good posture. But the next thing is that most beginners end up sounding like this. And that's because they don't produce much sound because they're using about this much bow in the middle of their bow. This is the easiest part of the bow to play in. So we want to learn to use the absolute whole bow, and you'll notice that it's really hard to play. I'm sure as you've been doing your bow exercises, near the frog where their bow has a lot of weight, and also near the tip where it's hard to keep your bow straight because it's so far out. It's really hard to angle the bow correctly. So when you're doing your scale, absolute whole bows take as much time as you need. So let's say you did those first 4 notes and you're continuing. Absolute whole bow to the tip. Get your next finger ready. And so on. You notice I'm getting all the way to the tip. Don't go to the tip to the point where the bow slips off the string, but within an inch. And then all the way back under the metal guard. And so on, as slow as you need to for you to get through that whole scale using the whole bow. Now again, you will probably find yourself making all kinds of sound errors, and you are one video away from me explaining every little thing that you need to do to make clean sound. But for now, still do your best. Keep your bow between the bridge and the fingerboard. So in other words, don't let it go too far over the fingerboard or too close to the bridge, and try to keep it as straight as you can. Now, once you have learned your scale well with the bow, you may go on to work on the songs with the bow. Now, first of all, make sure that whatever song you are studying with the bow, you have really learned it well plucking, okay? If you don't know the left hand very well and you try to add the bow, it's just going to get worse. So if you really know Mary Had a Little Lamb really well, now you can use the bow. But here's the important part. We're going to keep our whole bow rule. Now this means that every note will be a long note. It's going to sound like this. Just long bows on every single note. Now I know this, it kind of doesn't sound like the song anymore. When we plucked it, it sounded like the actual song. Now it just sounds like a whole bunch of long whole bows with the notes of the song. And that's actually the most important part, is that we use the notes of this song to develop, practice whole bows on a variety of notes. You will learn how to use proper rhythm with the bow in the Bach minuet, which we will get to in just a couple lessons. So today's lecture is fairly short, but this is probably more than a 1-week assignment to learn all the songs one by one, carefully adding it with the bow. Is actually quite a feat. So this is probably going to take at least a week, maybe 2. So practice carefully, and just keep in mind that other principle, that you don't want to do anything faster than you can do well, okay? If you are not ready yet to, like if you're working on Twinkle and the notes aren't all the way there, you make note mistakes when you're plucking, do more plucking. Don't start with the bow until you're really ready for it. Don't try to play it faster with the bow. Do it correctly. The speed will come on its own. So just so you guys are kind of aware, not for that's not homework for this lesson, but we'll talk about it a little bit in the next lesson. The requirement for me personally, when I look at students who want to move on to the next step after this, is I'm going to want you to play all 4 nursery rhymes without putting down your instrument, without a break. So as you can tell, you know, each nursery rhyme is only 2 lines long. One is 3. But the Bach minuet, which is on the next page, is quite a bit longer. So it's a little bit of an endurance exercise. All that to say, don't start playing through all of your nursery rhymes together yet, but do learn them really well individually. It's going to make it much easier to put them all together. So let's review. First of all, until you guys are done with your nursery rhymes, I want you to warm up with plucking. So right now you're going to do your full plucking first. So that's like the first thing you do is pluck everything, just to warm up your left hand. Then you're going to do your whole bow exercises. Always, always just warm up that bow hand. Then you're going to bow your scale. Let's say, I think you guys could do it 3 times. And then lastly, you will do bowing each song 3 times. Just as practice. Be patient. Part of learning to practice and play well is also developing your patience. So that's it. Sort of a shorter lesson today, but it's a little bit longer homework. Happy practicing, and we'll see you later for lesson 5.